RBG passing, that was a real loss, and I can't. I mean, you're a good person to ask because they're going to bring the vote up, but then Republican senator, two of them say they're not going to do it. I don't know. I am not educated enough on the system for right now, before just 50 days before an election, whether that could actually happen? Could they actually approve someone?
They also do have until the new president is sworn in, technically. So there's something called the lame duck session, which is between November 3rd of this year and let's call it January 20th of next year. So it's another, a couple months and change. So the rules are that they need a majority vote to confirm a new justice. Right now they have 53 Republican senators, and like you said, 2 said they don't want to do it. So now you have, if you have one more person, let's call him Mitt Romney, who decides not to, then you'd be at 50-50, but technically the vice president can give a tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So you need 2 more Republican senators to join this is not a good idea given this late stage caucus, if you will. And we're all waiting to see whether there are 2 more senators that head in that direction. There's nothing technically stopping them from trying to do this before the end of the year. For me, it's crazy that we're dealing with the repercussions that are so predictable of just this antiquated way of administering the Supreme Court. Like the fact that, and I used to say this on the trail, Joel, I was like, does it make sense that we are all literally just waiting on tenterhooks based upon the health of an 87-year-old woman? And then she passes, which I hate to say it was like somewhat predictable given that, she's been struggling with cancer for years and years. Yeah, that we needed to have, in my mind, like a much more modern approach to the Supreme Court for a long time. And I proposed 18-year term limits when I was running, which would improve things dramatically because then, you get an appointment, the person's there for 18 years, which is a plenty long time in just about any context. But they're not going to be there until the day they die. You don't have this political firestorm coming up out of nowhere when someone expires. The other big thing is you shouldn't have only 9 justices, which is another reason why it's such a firestorm whenever someone passes, because each vote is so pivotal. Someone recommended 27, which struck me as perfectly fine. And you just appoint a new one every 2 years until you get up to that level. And then you have enough of a critical mass. You also don't need all 27 to hear a case. That's the other thing, is that in district courts, some subset of the judges will hear it. And then if it's a major ruling that overturns a precedent, then they can bring everyone in. So that it's just painful to see our country struggling with something based upon a law that was passed in 1869. And there was an 1869 law that said 9 justices, but all you need them is a majority vote to say, you know what, it's not going to be 9 anymore. And then you can change it because there's nothing in the Constitution about 9. So I'm all excited about the fact that we need to try and modernize our government. That's one of my new jams, Joel. Modernize the government.
Yes.
And the Supreme Court has the most archaic approach you can think of. It's like it really is like something out of a Game of Thrones or some science fiction novel. It's like we have these 9 unelected folks that we appoint, and they're there until the day they die, and you're like checking their blood pressure and whatnot to see like, oh, are you going to be here for the 30 or 40 years, so that so nothing could change during that time. The whole thing is just mind-blowingly out of date.
I agree, and you've framed that perfectly, because it is, you forget that when Scalia died, it was just like this huge surprise, and then there's this huge, as you said, it's like this gigantic reaction because they're appointed for life. And yeah, if it was 18 years, which is a good run at any job, you would know, and it would be way easier. I mean, there's so many things. It's so strange to think, and I learned it mostly from Hamilton, but I read the book too. But you're like, oh, they just put these things. Tons of it works really well, but there is room for improvement, to say the least. My lord.
That's the unofficial motto of America now. Unfortunately, when it comes to government, Joel, it's like America, don't change anything. It's like America, fixed in stone. We had this rule, and it was delivered to us on a tablet. No, it wasn't. I mean, these guys, brilliant people, put together a system, but the system needs to adapt and evolve. And DC is not really built for evolution that way. That to me is something that should be nonpartisan or bipartisan. It's like, look, let's just modernize. And you can imagine a more modern approach to the Supreme Court terms and appointments. You can imagine a more modern approach to legislation and
Voting.
trying to
Voting.
voting for sure. I mean, the fact that we're dealing with some of like the fears we're dealing with around voting. And I'm not someone like, I understand the technology and understand that. Look, if you just had all of our voting done via smartphone, first there's a major party that actually likes to have people not vote, which that's one set of issues. But it is true that some of the technology would not be ready for prime time. But you have to start moving in that direction, and there could be a period when you have more advanced voting via smartphone, and then you have some paper redundancy for a while or whatnot, and you can like use things as backup. Like that, there are different approaches you could take, that it's not just all in one direction. And Americans would love that stuff. If we were like, look, you're going to vote the old fashioned way. It's cool, but we're going to do this pilot program of digital voting too. And we're just going to like start stress testing it and see how it works and see how you like it and whatnot. Like that would be awesome. I know, like that would be an intelligent approach. Instead, a lot of it is political, where a lot of folks like things the way they are for really just for keeping things the same. Right now, the congressional approval rating around the country is 21%, which is very low, and it's about even with what it's been this last number of years. It's even been lower at times. It's been like 17. The re-election rate for members of Congress is 94%. So think about that for a second. You're like, wait a minute, none of us are happy with what's going on, but like everyone wins. like, let's come back and be like, well, if I want to keep my seat, I win. And there are a bunch of structural reasons for that. I mean, part of it's gerrymandering and the way the districts are set up. Part of it, though, is just this massive fundraising advantage where the average successful House candidate raised 1.6 million. For Senate, it's 10.4 million. And so can you imagine a normal person trying to raise 1.6 million for a congressional campaign? It'd be impossible. It's like, I mean, I was frankly something of an unknown, but I remember raising that first set of money, and it was brutal. Like no one wanted to give me money either. I was like, hey, you and I have been friends for a long time. I'm running for president. You want to donate 700 in my campaign? And that stuff was really, really difficult. So for anyone who is trying to do the right thing and run for Congress for their district, like unless you have been cultivating tons of relationships with people that have money over a period of time, like you're not going to be able to raise enough to be competitive. And frankly, if you were the sort of person that was cultivating those relationships for a long time, you probably were not the person we're hoping runs. You know what I mean? Like those two things are kind of mutually.
Yeah, they have no choice but to cultivate those relationships because they're not going to raise the money if they don't. And it's so, like the campaigning is endless. It starts so it makes like buying Christmas gifts in July. And I like the European model. I guess it's British, where they're like, okay, you can start campaigning on this day, and then
Yes.
for it, and then it stops. But the system is so ingrained, and it's helped a lot of people, and so they're not going to stop it.
The never-ending campaign, man. I just saw this stat that said, like Barack Obama in his last year in office, when he or one of the years he was running for re-election, it might have been 2012, attended over 200 fundraisers that year. And you're just like, how are you trying to run the country
right?
And show up to 200 fundraisers? Does anyone think that's like an optimal use of his? Or freaking Trump has never stopped campaigning.
And then you think about the Senate, and then you think about Congress, and then obviously the state Congress, all of that, and they're all doing it. And I just I don't know, would you want your doctor if your doctor had to raise their salary, like no, I want them to focus on medicine and making sure that I stay healthy and they're up to date with the latest information and not out doing this work to, just maintain themselves.
Thank you for listening in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you did, please do subscribe to Yang Speaks and click on notifications so we can let you know every time we have a new episode.